You're becoming very well known. You're an outstanding leader. I think some refer to you as a modern day saint. I'm sure this embarrasses you. But what do you make of it when people are making a lot of you? How do you handle that?
Well, in reality, it means nothing to me. They do. I had this issue. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just an ordinary pastor trying to do the work of God. And I know I work in the highest political circles as well, but at the end of the day, what casts out all fear is perfect love. And that love comes from the children. So when I go back next week and I'm back in Iraq, I'm back home with my children. And they love me, and I love them.
How do you feel about the situation now that the U.S. have formally withdrawn?
Oh, it's terrible. I said to my wife, it will make no difference that America's leaving because they've not been on the streets for 2 years. Everything changed. We could not even get into the Green Dome because our badges were from the American Army. I phoned my wife and I said, darling, I was wrong. Everything has changed. She said to me, this is the first time in 20 years of marriage you've ever admitted you're wrong.
Have you ever been wrong?
Well, I have been, but obviously I haven't admitted it enough. Well, I was very wrong.
Yeah. And the war in Iraq, was it for good or for ill, as you see it?
It was for good. Saddam had to be removed. But the key things were not put in place for afterwards. And the most important thing was engaging with the religious leaders. And that wasn't in place. So we tried to do that. And I remember going to Bremer, the ambassador of the CPA, the coalition authority, and I said to him, you've got to deal with the religious leaders. He said, oh, this isn't a religious country. Don't worry about religion. First we'll deal with water and electricity. 6 weeks later he came back and said, Andrew, I can't even deal with water and electricity because religion keeps getting in the way.
You're going back to Baghdad. You're a key player there. The situation is unstable, in turmoil. Several people killed yesterday in a suicide bombing. What do you see in the future, and what role do you think Iran is going to play in the unfolding of events?
Well, the fact is that we do not know what the future is. We read in Scripture that they'll even kill you in God's name, and that's what's happening. Politically, things are very difficult. We have no stability. We have Syria and Saudi on one side. We have Iran on the other side. So the external influence is very great, and the external influence for violence as well. We will keep working for peace. Why? Because we're told to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And if we're to pray for the peace, we have to work for the peace as well. And we have been put in a unique position to do that. So we'll keep doing it.
Are you concerned about what's happening in Syria right now?
Oh, very concerned.
Do you see any hope for that situation?
Look, to be honest with you, the Arab Spring, or as my people call it, the Arab thing, is very bad news for Christians. And there are so many Christians in the Middle East. We used to have 1.5 million in Iraq. Now we have 200,000. 10% of Syria used to be Christian. 10% of Egypt And now people are fleeing for their lives. The radical Islamic sects are taking over, like the Islamic Brotherhood and Wahhabis and Salafis. And the only hope is God.
When you are by yourself and you have a moment's peace, just to listen to the Lord and maybe do a little talking too. I guess, we're talking about prayer here. What do you pray about? What do you discuss with the Lord?
Well, what you said at the beginning when you listen to God is so important, because I teach my people in Iraq how to listen to God. And this week in the lectionary, the readings were about Samuel. And the amazing thing is that one day I was in Washington flying to Charlotte, and I heard a voice, "Tell that woman to call the child Rivka." I said, "No." Again, "Tell the woman to call the child Rivka." I said, "I'm English. She's too old to have a baby." Third time, this time I thought of Samuel. I said, "Hello, madam. Thought of calling the child Rivka?" She said, "Who are you? How do you know?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm just a pastor." She said, "I'm going now to my daughter's pregnant," and I got to name her daughter. So she phoned her daughter. The mother told the daughter, "I've just seen a pastor, he's told me what to call the child." She said, "I want to speak to him." I talked to her, and she was obviously in labour, and she said, "Father Andrew?" I said, "What do you mean, Father Andrew?" She said, "You are my chaplain in Baghdad. I'm in the army. And you are my pastor." Her picture's in one of those books. Me sitting on Saddam Hussein's throne, it became the chaplain's chair, and she's standing beside me. So I say to God, "Lord, here I am. Your servant's listening. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say." And every time I'm so aware that the Spirit of the living God directs us. And without it, we can do nothing. With it, we can do everything. I only pray what I believe is in the will of God, because then it will be answered. So my prayer is as much listening as saying. Listening to what Jesus is saying to me, expressing my love to him, and praying about individual situations.
You've got 2 boys?
Yes, 2 in England.
Yeah, 2 in England, then you've adopted some in
Yeah.
Baghdad. Is it Josiah who you quote him in one of your books? He's writing a letter or writing about his father. And in the context of that, you mentioned that your friends and co-spiritual leaders in Baghdad have said to you that the only way your ministry can continue is if your son takes over leadership when you're done?
Yes, absolutely.
And I was thinking, what pressure is that for a kid? But as I read what he's saying, it seems to me that the Lord is just setting him up for this.
Yeah, the Islamic leaders in Iraq said quite clearly, "We're not having anybody else take over from you, only your son, because it's very tribal and you pass things through with the family." And when my son Josiah was younger, I used to say, "Josiah, what are you going to do when you're older?" He said, "I'm going to Cambridge to read archaeology and anthropology." I said, "Then what?" He said, be the Prime Minister. I said, what, straight from Cambridge to being Prime Minister? I said, why? He said, we've never had a good one in our family, and I want to be the first good Prime Minister.
Well,
his great-great-uncle was Neville Chamberlain.
well, there you go.
Who wasn't so good.
It wasn't so good. The master of appeasement.
Yeah.
It could very well be the Lord will have him doing something more important, and that is following in your footsteps in Baghdad.
Absolutely.
Andrew White is the author of several books, but this one, The Vicar of Baghdad, is the one I've been featuring. Forward by Lord Carey, by the way, the former Archbishop of Canterbury. And if you'd like to get in touch with his ministry, you can log on to frrme.org, frrme.org. There on the screen you can get it and copy it down. And if you want to do something important, friends, try praying for Andrew every day. Thanks for coming our way.
Amen.
Back with more after this.